Tonight we are making roasted butternut squash wedges with sage and Parmesan. Butternut squash is probably my favorite hard or winter squash. The name comes from its buttery flesh and its nutty flavor. Those are also the reasons that I love it. Plus, the seeds are great for roasting and it's not stringy. This is a fairly simple recipe whose success lies in roasting the squash, which only makes it sweeter and nuttier, but also the combination of sage, Parmesan, garlic, and lemon zest really set this dish apart. Okay, so let's start with this. The very first thing I'm going to do is prep my pan, and I have it covered with foil, which I love to do when I'm roasting because it's so much easier to clean up your pan. So I'm spraying this in the center and I'm going to spread it around just because I don't want to get too much oil. I'm also going to be using olive oil with the butternut squash. Okay, that's perfect. Let's just set this aside for now. And then here I have my butternut squash, and I believe one of these, yeah, these are peeled, and we cut them in half like this so we could get them nice and solid on the cutting board and they're not rolling around. But let's get rid of these seeds. And what I like to use for that is a grapefruit spoon. And these seeds are kind of on the small side, but this is a fairly small squash, so that makes sense. And we just scoop them out like that, but the little grated edge on the grapefruit spoon is really great for this, and also just getting rid of that stringy flesh. That. Okay, perfect. And there's a little bit of a seed there. Okay, great. Okay, we'll set that there. So, again, we're going to put that cut side down so it doesn't roll around. And what I'm looking for here is roughly 1/2-inch slices. I'm going to try and be as consistent as I possibly can. Let me just quickly sharpen this knife up a little bit. This is just to get that edge back in shape. Just use my steel for that. And this is a Asan Toku knife, which is perfect for this. It has a straight edge, so it's really designed for going right down on your cutting board. And in this instance, because this is so hard, I'm going to use my hand on top, holding the knife like this, put my hand on top, making sure my fingers are on top of the blade, not under it, and then I'll just cut right down like that. Okay, and this will want to stick to my knife, which is fine. I just have to pull it off. But note I'm taking some care in placing the knife so I'm getting these pieces as nice and consistent as I possibly can. You know what? Let's just put my pan right here. Let's start tossing those on there. There we go. I had a client of mine years ago email me and ask me what the best way to cut up a butternut squash was, and my answer was get someone else to do it. but really the truth is you just have to work to get it flat as soon as possible. So generally I cut both ends off, the stem end and the bottom end, because you can't use them, so you get rid of those, and then I will peel the entire thing. You can use a flexible knife like a fish boning knife, works perfectly for it, or a peeler. Peel it and then cut it in half lengthwise so you can work with it flat like this. And of course you want to get those seeds scooped out once you, oops, now it's getting easier because part of it is missing. Oh, last one. Okay, be careful on that. Okay, and let's do this one. Let's start on this end, okay? As long as squash is vary in size so much. So when I say small squash, I mean, that's kind of a relative term. So when you get to the rest of these ingredients, depending on the size of your squash, you may have to alter that a little bit, use a little more or a little less, depending on what size squash you actually wind up with. See, it's starting to slide a little bit. Let me just let this off.
Use a regular vegetable peeler for peeling the squash?
Yes. Mark actually did this. Did you use this?
I did.
Yes. Sometimes I use, I'll show you this knife. Sometimes I use a knife like this. It has just a little bit of flex to it, not a whole lot, but I can run it down the side as long as I have it, sitting really firmly with the bottom down. Sometimes I do that, but a vegetable peeler works really, really well. You might have to go over each piece twice just to get down actually through the actual skin. And it's hard to handle. They just are hard to handle. That's all it is. Like I said, if you can get someone else to do it. There we go. Okay, last one. All right, let me just set this over here. Okay, so now we have all of our beautiful squash. And what color? Isn't that just gorgeous? I'm going to don some gloves here. This will, the flesh of the squash will actually turn your cutting board and your hands orange, so that's why I like to wear gloves. Okay, so what I need now is a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, and I'm just going to spread that around like that. And it is only a tablespoon. Remember that I already sprayed the pan, so it's already got some oil going. And then a teaspoon of kosher salt. Let's do this way. We're going to rub this all over the place, but I do want to give myself the opportunity to get it distributed. Okay. Half a teaspoon roughly freshly ground black pepper. I like it freshly ground, so I usually guess on my pepper. And I like pepper, so I usually do more than most people. Okay. And that is that. Oops, let me put that here. Trying to stay away from that camera. And then let's just rub this all around. This is really the only way I know to do this. Some vegetables I'll take and put them in a container and shake them or toss them in a bowl, that type of thing. But with this, you just have to get in there with your hands and try to make sure that you get the oil in contact with all of it, and as well the salt and pepper distributed. And the reason for the oil is, of course, this starts the cooking process. And so if you don't have the oil in contact with all of the butternut squash pieces, they can dry out and cook unevenly. So that's why you need to kind of take some time with this. Then we get everything back to a single layer. Perfecto. And we put it in our 450-degree oven. Yes, it is that hot. And I am going to do a little switching here because I have a pan of these already in there. There we are. Okay. Oops. Perfect. Okay, I had to switch racks. All right, so this is nicely browning. Not cooked completely though. We have to flip these over. This is going to be careful work because they are hot. Just want to make sure that they get the opportunity to cook on the other side. Get some of that nice browning going there too. And they don't get really, really brown unless you leave them in for longer. But they do get a nice cooked look to them. And I can tell the difference between them because the sides do look different. So it's worth taking the time to turn them. What a color this has. It's just so beautiful. Almost done. I have some chopped garlic over here that I really roughly chopped. The recipe calls for 2 cloves, and I have 2 large cloves, and that's what you want. This really benefits from that garlic, and I chop it, not mince it, because I want those kind of pieces on it. Okay, I think that looks good. So here is that garlic, and you can see it has a nice, it's chopped, but it's not finely chopped. It's got some chunks. So then I'm going to go and distribute this around, getting some on each one. The garlic is so sticky, so might have to do a little moving around in the end. But that's my goal, is to get some on almost every slice if I can, or every slice if I can. Let's move you over. So after this point, we're not going to be tossing these around, so that's why I'm taking time to get the garlic distributed to the best of my ability. And then I have to kind of move it around to make sure I got to everybody. I think that's looking pretty good. What do you think, Mark? Can you see this?
Yeah.
Looks distributed pretty well. So this is going to roast nicely for 10 minutes, and that garlic is going to cook nicely. It'll get sweet. It's not going to be garlicky and overwhelming. It's going to have a sweetness to it and a nuttiness to it, which is going to really enhance the dish. Okay, so this goes back in there. Can you set a timer for 10 minutes? We may have to cheat on that just a little bit because put that there. We'll see how long it takes us to get the rest of this done. I'm going to flip this over, work on the clean side. Okay, now I need to get some sage going. I need 2 tablespoons of sage and a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. Sometimes I'll say, you know, that cheese is interchangeable. You know, you can use this or you can use that. And certainly during the pandemic, we did a lot of, you know, the beginning part when we were cooking and things weren't available, we did a lot of substituting. But this Parmesan in this recipe is so nutty tasting. So if you can get Parmesan cheese, Reggiano preferably, please do, because it really makes the dish. Small little things. So what I did was I rolled these and then cut them down the center lengthwise. I'm going to have a little extra here, I think, but there we go. And then I want this a little bit finer, so just go through and chop it. Okay, that's more than 2 tablespoons, but that's okay. Let's put this in here. And then here is my Reggiano. I need a 1/4 cup of that. And that I'm going to guess on, just in terms of how much there actually is. But you know what? Don't over cheese this dish. I know it's really tempting when you have, you know, a really great cheese to just pile it on like a deep dish pizza kind of thing. But don't do that, because then you lose the flavor of the other things, and you want to really taste that squash coming through, and you want to taste that sage. So good. So any other questions while we're waiting on our 10 minutes?
Don asked, can you make this with sweet potatoes?
I think it would be fantastic with sweet potatoes. Absolutely. Sweet potatoes, yams. I think that would be great. The combination of the topping is just excellent. And actually, I've even used this type of thing on eggplant, if you can believe that. So that's kind of a different direction. But that little bit of cheese and the herb thing going on is so good together, and certainly garlic. And what makes the dish, and please don't let me forget to do this, is at the very end you cover the whole thing with a little bit of lemon zest, and that acid from the lemon zest that just perks the flavor up. And again, that combination of those things is just great together. So yeah, bring it on, sweet potatoes. Good idea. Anything else right now?
What is the sticky stuff that gets all over your hands when you cut up the butternut squash?
Yeah. I was actually going to complain about that earlier. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but you probably have. When you cut up a butternut squash, you get this filmy, it's kind of gooey stuff on your hands, and it's part of, and your hands turn orange. I always wear gloves, by the way, just to avoid that. That's my best solution for it. But what that actually is sap. That's what they call it. And it feels like sap, if you think about sap from trees, maple sap, that type of thing. So it's sticky, and then it dries, and when it dries, your skin gets really tight, and it does not wash off easily at all. And so so that's what it is. And what it's designed to do is when you cut a squash, you'll see usually this kind of a little bit of the sap beating up. That's to protect the freshness of the squash. That's what the squash is trying to do. It's trying to protect itself and not dry out. Unfortunately, it's just a kind of a terrible thing when you have it on your hands. So the only solution I've ever, to get rid of it immediately, and it doesn't hurt you, it just feels weird, is to use something like a scrub, like a facial scrub type of thing on your hands, and that will remove it. So that is the only thing. Hand lotion doesn't do it, soap doesn't do it, that does do it. So that's what I know about that. Any other questions?
Do you ever buy pre-cut butternut squash?
I don't buy pre-cut anything usually. I have, though. I remember a couple of years ago, you'll remember this, we were doing a large catering job, and they had pre-cut butternut squash at Costco. And I thought, okay, I've never done that, but we were feeding a lot of people, and I thought, oh, we'll try it. So we took it back to the kitchen, and we worked with it and tasted it and threw it all out. So that's how I feel about pre-cut stuff. I think, in some cases, some of it's good, and depending on where you're buying it, this had been around too long, and it didn't taste like squash. So I'm particular about my vegetables. But anyway, you can, some stores will cut things up in the morning, and that's totally good. I would just avoid anything that's packaged and has been sitting around for a while, and you can't tell how long it's been there. Then I would definitely not do that. I don't know if they sell frozen butternut squash, but I bet they do, and I bet that would be a better option if you wanted to take something that was partially, it's probably blanched or something like that, and use that. That might be a better option. I have a lot of success with frozen vegetables, actually. If you were watching this summer, I did a lot with frozen peas. Love frozen peas. Sometimes they work so much better than fresh ones. So there are cases when frozen just kind of wins in a way. So you could check that out. So do you think we can cheat a little bit on our 10 minutes?
Yeah, you're at roughly 7 minutes right now.
Okay, that oven's pretty hot, so let's pull it out. Oops. Yeah. So it could get a little bit browner than this, but for the sake of timing, we'll go ahead and get the rest of this done. So let's put our, let me grab it here, Parmesan. So again, we're working with these specific pieces, and we're going to put this back in the oven. So that's why I'm doing this on the baking sheet. And you can see this is, I'm being kind of gingerly about it, not giving them a little coating. It is so tempting. You know, cheese is such a great crutch, you know. But honestly, less is more in this case because you really want to taste all of the flavors. And if you just douse this with Parmesan, you're not going to be able to. I'm almost going to have, I think I will have enough. And if you do run short, you can always just grate a little bit more right onto the squash. Okay, I think that looks good. So next up, our sage. Like I said, I've got a little extra here, but I don't think that's a problem. And it's hard to control this and get it all right where you want it. If you had a slightly bigger squash, it would be easier because the pan would be a little more full. I always try to write recipes with whole vegetables so that you're not, there's that timer, so that you're not ending up with a partial piece of squash in your vegetable drawer that you don't have a use for, that's not big enough to actually feed anyone. But when I first started writing recipes and I was looking at other recipes, that would always be the very first thing I would change. Okay. Well, I'm going to wind up using all of this anyway. Totally good. I think that looks pretty evenly distributed. And this is a visual thing too. There's certainly a flavor thing because you want to have a little bit of everything in a bite. You won't have a little bit of garlic in every bite, that's fine. But the sage, you can probably manage that. Okay, so we're going to put this back into the oven. And that is only for 2 minutes. That's just to get that cheese melted. That's it. We'll work on that garlic a little bit more. Okay. So, any other questions while I am waiting for our 2 minutes? Did you set a timer?
I will.
Okay. Make it a less now.
Can you use acorn squash too? So I guess any squash will work, huh?
Yeah, you can use acorn squash. I mean, the thing about butternut squash is it has that nice long neck, and the neck is you know, it's just pure flesh. And the other thing is it's not stringy. So if you do this with an acorn squash, you're going to have really thin strips, so it's going to be harder to do. But you can still do it if, you know, and it's not really designed for a summer squash, although that would be good. Like I said, I've done similar things with eggplant and that type of thing. But any hard squash will work. But butternut squash is, you know, like I said in the beginning, I love that squash because you can puree it, you can cut it up and get nice credible pieces out of it, and the flesh is completely smooth. So that's the reason that I picked that. My latest thing with acorn squash is I like stuffing them. They're like little bowls. I think we're going to do another one of those in a couple of weeks for Thanksgiving with wild rice. Okay. And we're just going to see, and this garlic looks pretty good. It would be a little bit browner, but you can't go a lot longer than that extra 2 minutes after the 10, because then it will start to brown too much. Remember that you're at 450 degrees. And now I'm just kind of distributing these, but not being too careful about getting them on in a single layer. Smells fantastic. When I open that oven door, you can just smell that sage and garlic coming out. Just beautiful. Perfect holiday dish because sage, butternut squash, all perfect for holidays. A holiday table. Oops, that one just went on its own. Let's flip you back over. Okay, there we go. And then last but not least, and we will estimate on this, I've got some lemon zest, and I'm going to just zest that right over the top for the recipe, and not just the yellow part. We don't want to go down into the pith because that gets bitter. So we're really just doing the top, and we'll just do it all over the, again, trying to make sure we get some on everything. It's just a little bit, but that little hint of citrus just sends that flavor. It's not that you necessarily say, wow, this is really lemony. It just makes everything taste better. Okay, a little bit more. Okay, I think that's it. There they are, our beautiful butternut squash wedges with sage and Parmesan. And I am going to take a little bite. Okay, any other questions come in, Mark?
That's all I see right now.
Okay, this is going to be super hot, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so that, it's sweet, it's savory, it's nutty. Little tiny bit of lemon just makes it all come together perfectly. Such a lovely dish. I hope you enjoy making it. So, okay, we're going to wrap it up then. Don't forget to check out the link and look at the croissant class. Again, it's December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That is a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It is going to be a whole bunch of fun. And Cooking Club members, remember that you don't have to pay for it. You just have to show up. We'll send you everything. And that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. I hope you make this dish, and we will see you next week. Ciao. Mwah.